In the Middle Ages, the body mattered. It determined whether you could work, fight, marry, or survive on your own. On a narrow street just after dawn, a man moves slowly along a wall. One leg does not bend properly. He keeps his shoulder against the stone to steady himself. At the market, a child with an uneven face reaches toward a basket. The seller pulls it back. The mother turns the child away without speaking. Near the church door, a blind beggar sits on the ground. He knows the sound of footsteps. He does not know who is passing. Disability was not hidden in medieval society. It was visible. It was part of daily life. Some people were cared for inside their homes. Some were supported by charity. Others were pushed to the edge of the street, the village, or the city. There was no single response, no single rule. What happened depended on where you were born, who your family was, and how much help they could afford to give. For those who could not work with their bodies, survival followed a different path, and that path began early. Medieval life depended on physical ability. Most work required strength and balance. Fields were plowed by hand, loads were carried on backs and shoulders. Tools had to be lifted, held steady, and used for hours at a time. There was little room for rest. If the work stopped, food ran out. Houses were narrow and uneven, stairs were steep. Streets were rough stone or packed dirt. Moving through them was part of daily effort. Illness and injury were common. Falls, infections, broken bones, burns. War added its own damage. Limbs were lost, eyes were ruined, heads were hit so forcefully that memory or speech was altered. There was no clear line between being healthy and being disabled. A person could cross it in a single day. Care depended on what the household could manage. If someone could still contribute in some way, even slowly, they stayed useful. If they could not, the strain showed quickly. There were no tools designed for limited movement, no spaces built to accommodate weakness. The body had to adjust or be adjusted around. In this world, the body was not separate from survival. It was survival. Some disabilities were present from birth. Midwives noticed them immediately. A limb that did not form fully, a spine that curved too sharply, a face that drew attention before the child could cry. There were no diagnoses, only what could be seen. Baptism often happened quickly, sometimes the same day. If the child was not expected to live, the priest was sent for at once. What happened next depended on the household. In some families, the child was kept close, fed, washed, carried. Older siblings were told to help. The child learned the limits of the body early through daily handling. In poorer households, care competed with work. Someone had to stay home. Someone else had to earn more. Food had to be divided. Not all children survived. Many did not reach adulthood with or without disability. Those who did grew up inside the same narrow spaces. They learned where they could move and where they could not. They learned which tasks were possible and which were not worth attempting. Church records mention them only briefly. A baptism, a burial, occasionally a note. Their lives were not hidden. They were lived in full view of the household. Many people became disabled later in life. War was one cause. Men returned with missing hands, damaged eyes or legs that no longer carried their weight. Some came back on their own, while others were helped home by family or neighbors. Not every wound was obvious. A blow to the head could leave a man slow to respond or unable to remember simple tasks. Speech changed, temper followed. Work caused injuries just as often. Mills crushed fingers, animals kicked or trampled. Falls from ladders or carts were common. Burns and infections were common. There was no fixed time for recovery. If someone could stand, they were expected to try. If they could not, the household adjusted or suffered. A craftsman who lost a hand could not return to his tools. A laborer who could not lift or walk was no longer useful in the fields. Some found smaller tasks, others did not. Status changed quickly. A man who had earned wages became someone who depended on them. The change was visible and rarely temporary. From one day to the next, a working body could become a burden. When disability appeared, the household was the first place it was dealt with. There was no outside system to rely on. Care came from those who shared the same roof. Wives, children, parents and kin adjusted their routines to make room for it. Food had to be prepared differently. Work was redistributed. Someone stayed behind while others went out. These changes were small at first, then constant. Care had limits. If the disabled person could still contribute, watching children, preparing food, repairing tools, they remained part of daily work. If they could not, the strain increased. In poorer households, there was little margin. One person unable to work could push the family into hunger. Decisions followed quietly. Who stayed home? Who worked longer? Who went without? Care was practical rather than gentle. Bodies were lifted, washed, moved, and left where they could be watched. There were no private rooms. Disability was lived in shared space, in full view of others. For some families, this arrangement lasted for years. For others, it ended when the household could no longer carry the weight. When a household could no longer provide care, attention shifted outward. The church was the next place people turned to, not for treatment, but for support. Alms were given at church doors on fixed days. Coins, bread, scraps of food. The exchange was brief and public. Those who could not work learned where to sit and when to appear, near entrances, along regular paths. Visibility mattered. Monasteries and hospitals existed, but their purpose was limited. They offered shelter, not cure. A bed if one was free, a bowl of food, sometimes clean water. Admission was not guaranteed. Space was tight, rules were enforced. Some were turned away. Inside, care followed routine. Prayers at regular hours, basic washing, little separation between the sick, the injured and the old. These places were meant to manage need, not remove it. They kept people alive, not independent. Charity came with expectation. Gratitude was required. Obedience was watched. Those who caused trouble did not stay long. For many, support from the church was temporary, a stop between the household and the street. And when that ended, there were few places left to go. Not everyone who became disabled stopped working. Some adapted their tasks. A man who could not lift worked seated. A woman with poor sight cleaned, sorted, or watched children. The pace was slower, but the work counted. Guilds offered little protection. Skill was important, but so did speed. Those who could not keep up were replaced. For others, begging became necessary. It followed rules. Certain streets, certain days, church doors, and market edges. Those who ignored these limits were moved on. The body was visible. Injuries were not hidden. Missing limbs, scars, blindness. These were shown openly. Some explained their condition. Others said nothing and waited. Income was uncertain. Weather mattered. Crowds mattered. So did patience. Begging did not mean isolation. Places were shared. Regular faces appeared. News traveled along the same routes as alms. Survival depended on attention. When attention faded, people moved. And when it failed completely, so did the body. Disability did not always bring help. In some cases, it drew suspicion. Unusual behavior was noticed quickly. Confused speech, sudden anger, wandering. These things were discussed by neighbors, not explained. Mental impairment was poorly understood. A person who did not respond as expected could be mocked, avoided, or feared. Children were chased off. Adults were warned. Certain conditions carried stronger reactions like seizures, loud outbursts, or uncontrolled movement. These disrupted work and prayer. Some were kept inside to limit attention. Doors were closed earlier, windows stayed shut, others were pushed away. A disabled person without family or charity might be told to leave the village, sometimes directly and sometimes through refusal. No food, no shelter, no work. Confinement happened as well in cellars or in outbuildings, also in hospitals that did not let people back out easily. Exclusion was rarely announced. It happened through distance, silence, and the slow closing of options. Status changed outcomes. A disabled noble did not face the same choices as a laborer. Wealth paid for care. Servants carried bodies that could no longer move well. Meals arrived on time. Rooms were warmed. Work was reassigned, not demanded. Authority remained even when strength failed. In some households, the disabled were kept out of sight, not hidden completely, but removed from public view. Appearances were managed. Visitors were chosen. Inheritance held significance. Land continued to produce income. Titles did not depend on walking or lifting. Among the poor, none of this applied. The same injury that ended a peasant's work could be absorbed by a noble household. The same illness that pushed one person to the street kept another inside stone walls. Records reflect this unevenly. Noble disabilities appear in letters and chronicles. Others appear only at the margins, if at all. The body was the same, but the outcome was not. Life continued around those who were disabled. Streets stayed busy, work resumed. Bells rang as they had before. Some individuals stayed put year after year. They might be found at a door or basking in the sun against a wall. Perhaps they were at the edge of a market, a familiar presence. Others disappeared, a name no longer spoken, a place left empty. There was no clear endpoint, no moment when the story stopped. For some, care lasted a lifetime. For others, it ended quietly. Disability did not remove a person from medieval society. It placed them within it on terms set by family, wealth, and chance, as those terms were rarely written down. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment and subscribe for more medieval history.